She is one of the biggest sporting icons in South Africa, an Olympic medalist, a multiple global record holder, a world champion, and she has followed a very illustrious athletic career and as of late has dedicated her life to the upliftment of others and achieving youth development in sport. Having set world records for the 15 kilometers and on 4 separate occasions for the half marathon, she has also won both the World Cup and World Half Marathon titles, with her crowning glory being the silver medal she won for the 10,000 meters at the 1992 Summer Olympics in Barcelona. She will address the Congress from the perspective of her own magical year in athletics and on the challenges of developing and creating opportunities for the future stars of distance running. She is also now one of the founding directors of Africa's first academy devoted specifically to endurance sports, and the academy is known as EnduroCAD. I now invite Elana Meyer to address the Congress.
Well, thank you very much. It's an incredible honor for me to be here. I think I've run many races of many of the race organizers and race directors here, which created magical moments for me. So thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today. I feel really privileged, and then to especially come, after two, great South African legends. I really salute Willie Matolu for, what he and so many others, in the 90s did for our distance running. Then Blanche, absolutely being a pioneer, being the first black South African woman to become a Springbok athlete. So I really feel privileged to be here today. What I would like to share with you today is a magical year. And I just want to take you back to where it all started. I come from a very small town, Albertinia. I grew up on a farm. Most people don't know where it is. It has no track. I come from, a very average family. You can see. My mother's not a Kenyan. My father's not Ethiopian. One of 4 children, didn't grow up at high altitude. But still, managed to achieve some success in sport, without even having a track in my town. I can remember the first moment of great inspiration, came to me as a 9-year-old. And then back then, we didn't have a TV, so it wasn't that I watched it on TV, but I was inspired by the performance of a 14-year-old gymnast called Nadia Comaneci, at the Olympic Games. She went on to become the first athlete to achieve the perfect 10. And at the Olympic Games, she went on to achieve another 5 of those perfect 10. And that inspired me incredibly, and I really wanted to become a gymnast. So that, but that dream could never get the wings to take off, because in my town, we didn't even have a balance beam. So then when they announced at my school that there's going to be a fun run, I thought, that sounds great. And I think at that stage, I was probably more attracted to it through the fun part than the run part. But anyway, I decided to start running, to prepare for that run. And, I think I really fell in love with running, the moment that I started doing it. I went for little runs on the farm to get ready for this fun run, and really just love the feeling of running. I love feeling free. I love having the chance to choose how fast and how slow I can go. I love being able to decide how far I want to go. And I think what I also loved was the challenge. Often I went for a little run and I just wanted to go a little further, seeing what's around the next corner. And I remember one of the first of my challenges, I would just want to run from the farm to the town. to see, if I can do it without walking, and there's this mother of a hill. And, every time I got to it, I had to walk it, and the first time I could do it in one go, I felt like I achieved something, so running gave me a feeling of achievement. But I had a couple of problems when I started running. Zola Bud, one of our other runners, we both 1966 models. So since the year I started running, I was running against this other runner, Zola Bud. And Zola was a world-class athlete, from the age of 14. She was running world-class times, and beating me by huge margins. But I think what was fantastic for me is, even though I didn't win the race, I always set it my own target. And, when I achieved that, I felt like a winner. So also as a young girl, my next door neighbor told me about this great race that I have to go and run. And as a 13-year-old, I was inspired to run one of our great races in South Africa, the Foot of Africa. And there was a half marathon, and I entered. I didn't know a lot about the sport. I didn't know you have to belong to a club and have to have like numbers and stuff. So, I ended up winning the half marathon at the age of 13, only to get disqualified because I didn't belong to a club. But, I also really enjoyed the distance, and I knew that one day I will certainly run this distance again, because obviously after the race, a lot of the coaches came to me and said, but, it's way too far. You don't run that far when you're that little. So over the next 3 years, I moved to a little bit of a bigger town. There was a coach, and I didn't run any road running, for the duration of my high school, up to matric. And I think those were the years of isolation. So even though South Africa was isolated from the rest of the world, our federation was very creative. And we ran many different races. We had the opportunity to run many different races with great coverage. People knew the runners in South Africa. If it was Monday evening, track and field was on TV. So people knew the South African runners back then. Then also our federation, we had our national championships. Then they select some teams, a Springbok team, junior Springbok team, Nedbank team, and then we dress up in different clothes, and then we run against each other again. But that helped a lot. In years of isolation, we had some fantastic creative opportunities within South Africa. And it kept me in the sport, and I loved it. There was competitions, it was healthy, and it was a lot of fun. Then, Zola had a British grandfather, and back in 1984, she had the chance to go to the Olympic Games. Even though I qualified, I couldn't go to the 1984, 1988 Games. But towards the end of the 80s, beginning of the 90s, I sensed some changes in South Africa. And I also, I got to the position where, over the previous 8 years, I got to become the best runner in South Africa, So, and all of a sudden, I decided that, I have to raise the bar, And even though I could not run against Greta Weitz, I could not run against Ingrid Christiansen or Liz McColgan, I knew their times, and that became my challenges, So even though I couldn't run them, I couldn't race them in races, I started to compete against them on paper, and their times were my targets. Then in the early 90s, to achieve those incredible, great international times, I knew it's going to be very, very difficult to do it on your own. And as I sat down, myself and Zola, we knew that if we work together, that, we can actually run times that will be world-class times. But it's not something that you can do on your own. So, and it was a big race here in Durban, on the Durban track, and myself and Zola and the coach sat down before the race, and we decided that we want to go for a world-class time tonight. We talked about the race, but how are we going to achieve that? And we made a plan. So we decided that we will share the laps, and then the last bit of the race, we will race each other. So for the first 6 laps in the race, Zola went in front in the first. After the first lap, I came past. And we kept a good pace. And at the end, we had a fantastic result. I raced Zola many, many times. And we probably raced like 100 races where Zola won 99 of them, but this was one of the races that I won. So on this magical evening in Durban with the nice hot weather, I ran a time of 8:32, which was the best time in the world for a couple of years. Zola was second. I broke the SA record, and that because we worked as a team. And then the announcement came, on the 11th of February 1990, that Nelson Mandela walked free from prison, and I also feel that we will be able to walk into freedom in terms of running, something that I was been waiting for a long time, and even though there was speculations, will South Africa be ready to be back for the World Championships in 1991, and I was really hoping and praying that we will be there, because I was really in the top form of my career. I've just run a 8:32, and I was hungry and ready to go. But unfortunately, things did not work out. We did not have unity in the sport yet. We still had a bit to go. But I still believe that, I will have an opportunity to learn a lot, and invested a lot of money, but made the commitment to go to the Tokyo World Championships in 1991. And there was magical moments there. I can remember, obviously one of the highlights was, sitting in the stands and watching Carl Lewis, to have 6 of the most amazing jumps, and then to only be beaten by Mike Powell in the final jump, breaking the very long-standing world record. And then it was also very painful to sit in the stage and watching the 10,000 meters women. I think at that stage, I really believed that, I could race the best runners in the world. I've done it on paper the last couple of years, and on many occasions I came out on top. So it was very hard to sit in the stage and watching Liz McColgan winning the 10,000 meters for women. I was sad and really frustrated. I also had the privilege to see the first women from Africa when getting onto the podium to get the bronze medal in the 3,000 meters, when Susan Sirma got the bronze medal. They won the race in 8:35, and I also knew that, I could have also been really competitive there. But I came back to South Africa, really hungry and determined. The very next day, flying back all the way from Tokyo, Japan, quite a long way, quite a big time change, 6 hours of time change. The very next day, it was the SA cross-country championships. And in that picture, you will see Colleen de Rieck, multiple Olympian athlete, Zola Butt, world record holder, Olympic athlete, and they're just making it into the picture. Gwen van Lingen, an Olympic finalist in the 1500. So that was the depth, and closely behind that, another sea of great South African women runners. I came back hungry, determined, and I managed to win the race. A couple of weeks later, it was the SA 15K championships, and I was so hungry and so determined, that I really went into the race fearless. I think I went through the first 3 kilometers in 8:58. Just because I was so motivated and so hungry to become part of the international racing circuit. I broke the world record by 20 seconds on that day. It was greatly received. I received some great rewards. Winning 50,000 rand back in the early 90s was a lot of money. And then, early the next year, 3 magical weeks of racing followed. I broke the SA record for the 2,000 meters at altitude, coming from sea level in a 5:40. A week later, I broke the SA record for the 5,000 meters, running a 14:44, in Bellville, in South Africa, no paces. And another week later, breaking my own personal best in the 1,500 meter, winning it in a 4:02. And then at last, the announcement came, and I can remember that voice, when Antonio Samaran said, I want the Jore younger boys and the Jore younger girls to come to Barcelona. And that was the sweetest words that, that I've ever heard. After 30 years of being in isolation and not having the opportunity to compete internationally, it was the sweetest words that I could ever hear. And just after that, Josh Hermans came to Stellenbosch, agent that Louise Posso was talking about, to come and see me. Kim McDonald came to Stellenbosch, to come and see me, and I committed, and Kim McDonald was the agent, that was managing from a racing perspective of my whole career. If I knew Louise Posso back then, I would certainly have gone with him. So I felt free at last, but, it was still, we have to go back into the international world through Africa, and then having the privilege, to compete in Africa, on a filled stadium, welcoming South Africa back, into the international arena was an absolute privilege. I had the opportunity to race Susan Sirmel that just came back from the World Championships with a bronze medal. Myself and Zola came out on top. The next step was to go to the Africa Championships. There I dipped down, I ran the 1,500. But I think what I remember more of the African Championships, was the fact that a very unknown runner, Dorata Tulu, won the 5,000 and 10,000 meters there. Dipping under the 60 seconds for the last 400 meters, and that sent some serious red signals. From the Africa Champs, I was released into Europe, which was very exciting. My first race out of Africa was in Hengelo, and it was also great to sort of go back to where my ancestors are from. I came from my generations back came from the Netherlands, so it was great to step onto the track in Europe for the first time, and they had a very tough race, racing Sonia O'Sullivan that went on to become one of the world's greatest 3,000 and 5,000 meter runners. Finishing a close second, it was a fantastic experience. I think it was also quite an eye-opener because, previously, even though we dressed in different racing outfits, I knew in South Africa exactly all the athletes. I know how good they are. I know when they can kick, and all of a sudden getting there, everybody just looked like a great athlete, So it was quite an overwhelming experience. It was really hot. They had to water the track the day before. They had to water the track before the race started. But certainly, a privilege to move into the international arena. And then I had the opportunity to run my first Grand Prix race, in Stockholm, and that was, it was another privilege to go back to a city where the first Olympic gold in the marathon was won for South Africa at that specific stadium. When Kenneth MacArthur won the first Olympic gold medal in the marathon for South Africa. So there I ran the 5,000, and it was really a good stepping stone for me, winning it. Back in South Africa then, we had the Boy Patong massacre where 40 people died. And all of a sudden, I got some faxes coming through to me in Europe saying, things are not going as planned. We maybe not going to compete in the Olympics. So it was this unbelievable roller coaster road. And, and all I wanted to do was to try and focus on getting to Barcelona. So when I eventually got there, it was absolutely unreal. It was like, it was, and then walking into our Olympic village, and to meet Madiba for the first time was an incredible experience. He uplifted the spirit of the whole team of the, we had a small team. We shared a physio and doctor with Australia, which didn't work out that well. It was a magic moment walking onto the Olympic Stadium, being part of the Olympic family, being part of the opening ceremony. And I almost had to pinch myself to realize, it's real, it's true. We actually have the opportunity to raise the best athletes in the world. It was a magnificent setting, with the Olympic track on the top of Montjuïc, and to experience the culture of Catalonia at the opening ceremony. It really was a magical moment for me. And then to walk onto the track, and to have the opportunity to represent South Africa and know that the whole of the country is behind me was incredible. I think, all the planning that went into the race, I had a plan A and a plan B and a plan C, because I know Liz McColgan was a hot favorite. She won the World Championships the previous year. And all the rumors in the Olympic Village was that Liz McColgan's going to go out really fast, which would obviously have suited me. Because, also being a front runner, but I knew, there's also, you have the Ratatouille that has got a blistering last lap, there's the unknown athletes in the field, Lynn Jennings, the World Cross Country Championships, so I tried to have plans for every single move in the race, and then it was the event, and I actually just want to relive the moment. You know, so that was a magical moment. I think it's hard to explain how many years, you know, was celebrated in that very, very single moment. You know, it was many, many years of training really hard, many, many years of wishing that we could race the best. You know, and on that specific day, you know, I didn't win gold, but it meant gold to me. You know, I came back to South Africa, you know, and was received by everybody in an unbelievable way. You know, and that was a summary of that year. You know, I ran 41 races. I broke 7 South African records. I broke 1 world record, and I got 1 Olympic silver medal. It was a magical year for me, but I think, you know, that was a golden era for South African athletics. You know, that was the era when Willie Matolu won the New York Marathon. We had 45 men running under 2:15. We had Josiah Tugwane winning the Olympic gold. You know, today we have 5 men running under 2:15 in the marathon. You know, it was the era where I was privileged to run many of the races, you know, and had unbelievable experiences in Boston, in New York, in London, in Chicago, in LA, in Berlin. It was an incredible year. It was an incredible decade for South Africa. You know, will we be ready for Rio? You know, and I think, you know, we've got a long way to go. I think there's, you know, Blanche touched on many points why we are struggling in South Africa. You know, and I think it really is a multi-tiered problem. You know, I think we need to address it on a lot of levels. You know, a year ago, we launched EnduroCAD, you know, really with the objective of supporting talented runners in South Africa. You know, we need a functional federation. You need events. You need athletes to train together. You know, so through EnduroCAD, we want to identify athletes in South Africa. And in this week, the previous 4 days, we had a camp, EnduroCAD camp in Durban. You know, with the support of Comrades Marathon, we've tested 15 athletes, and we are very pleased to say we have got incredible talent in South Africa. You know, from there, athletes will be set up in camps in a satellite format initially to be supported to develop the way they should. You know, but we also need events. It's a great pity that Pietermaritzburg and Durban is so far apart. You know, was it 42 kilometers? You know, we would have had the opportunity to develop many great athletes, you know, through such a great event. You know, but we really need also a great marathon in South Africa. You know, and I will talk to you this evening about the Cape Town Marathon. Thank you very much.